The Planetary tech on display here is stunning. But how does it compare with other space games? That's something we're going to look at. These planets are from a recent highlight reel shown at CitizenCon. They show a look at the worlds of Pyro and as yet unreleased star system. The question, just how much do these put the worlds of other space games to shame? The short answer right here, yeah, quite a bit. But the long answer is certainly a bit more involved. So, what makes for a good planet? Well, that will be subjective. Everyone is certainly going to have a different take on that. For me to genuinely enjoy planets, they must fulfill these key points. Now, I'll get into my reasoning for each of these as we move through the video. A quick note right here though, this video is not about project or game development. It isn't about the successes and failures of gameplay and game design. It's not about money raised, lack of releases, or even botched releases. It's purely about Planetary tech, so yeah, not talking about which game has the best gameplay. So okay, there's a lot of different space games out there with planets, but I'm going to focus on just 3. The reason being that these are the ones I'm most familiar with, and I do believe these are the ones that have put most work so far into their planets. But I would also like to mention both Space Engine here as well as Infinity Battlescape, 2 titles that do have fantastic planetary tech, but I'm not going to go into detail on this video, maybe a future video. Variety is the spice of life, or so they say. That makes complete sense in this context, as it helps to keep things interesting. For this purpose, variety can come in 2 forms: variation from planet to planet, or variation in biomes across a single planet. One or the other is good, but both is certainly preferable. Elite Dangerous Odyssey then certainly has plenty of planets, an entire galaxy in fact. There's also plenty of variety here. We have grey rocky looking planets, beige rocky looking planets, red rocky looking planets, and so on. Additionally, there's a variety of ice looking planets. Each type of planet can also potentially come with a cloudless sky colour. Now, whilst most of the planets certainly have a decent texture quality, much of the surface on most of the planets is, shall we say, a little on the flat side. But if you spend some time looking for outcrops, small valleys or rises, then there's a lot of potential for interesting locations. Now, there's also some flora to be found, but it is few and far between, and generally I feel is uninspired for the most part. Buildings and settlements can also be found, but once you have seen a handful, you have more or less seen them all. In the end, Elite's greatest success for planetary variation is also its greatest downfall. Realism might mean there's a semblance of reality here, but it also means that variation is limited, especially without the presence of any complex atmospheric planets. As time moves on, Star Citizen increasingly shows what is possible with its planetary tech. The existing planets already look amazing. With the eventual release of Pyro someday, they will certainly look even better. Star Citizen then has a limited number of worlds. You can count them on your fingers if you also use your toes. What it lacks in number, it more than makes up for in variety. Whether you're looking for barren rocky worlds, frozen tundras, forests, grassy plains, lands of waste, or even full cities, you can find it here. Then there's also stunning sunsets, volumetric clouds, weather effects, and more. Further, many worlds also have multiple biomes. So that I don't get ahead of myself here, it's worth mentioning that not all of this tech is fully ready or fully complete. For example, rivers aren't exactly great, and water in general is still half-baked. But we're talking about variation here, and there's variation in abundance. No Man's Sky chooses a completely different approach to its visual style. It's extremely stylistic and doesn't even attempt to aim for realism, but in my opinion, this works in its favour. The game has trillions upon trillions of worlds. It also has a very high level of variety. Here, you can find rocky worlds, grassy worlds, various types of toxic worlds, water or ice worlds, volcanic worlds, and indeed many more that I can't even list here. Worlds are also full of both flora and fauna. Sure, it's all procedurally generated, and much of it isn't believable, not in the slightest. But then, it doesn't try to be, nor does it need to be. So, in terms of planetary variety, it's very hard to beat No Man's Sky. The main downside is that the game doesn't go very far out of its way to deliver a variety of different biomes on each world. Now, Elite Dangerous Odyssey is a different beast to Elite Dangerous Horizons of old. I'm not covering Horizons in this video, as the old Horizons planetary tech is no longer in development. Odyssey then uses a new codebase for its planets. They're each distinct, different to those of Horizons. In terms of assets, you'll likely see mixed opinions on this one. Textures are decent, assets such as rock formations do exist, but they are extremely mixed in terms of quality. While some truly stunning stuff can be found, these are somewhat of a rarity. Sky colorations on atmospheric worlds are nice, although you need to make sure that you are on the correct part of the planet, as these look best near the terminators. Ultimately, Odyssey planet assets are not terrible, but in comparison to other planetary tech out there, they're certainly on the drab side. Star Citizen shines when it comes to its planet asset quality. Attention to detail and much consideration has clearly been given to every part of these worlds. Grass, trees, rocks, ground textures, cliffs, and everything else looks great. As mentioned previously, however, water is still somewhat lacking. Skies really do look nice, and clouds are of a good quality. Star Citizen does let itself down, however, with the size of its planets. Whilst smaller planets make sense for gameplay purposes, they sometimes look a bit weird. Clouds extend almost into space, and mountains tower above the world's surfaces. It can look very jarring. Ultimately though, this takes away very little from the overall experience. Some planets in No Man's Sky can look quite plain, others are full of life. In all cases, the assets for the title are very nice. Art style certainly needs to be taken into account here. No Man's Sky has no intent to be realistic, but it's confident in its own style, and that certainly works. Beyond that, there's not too much to say. What's here works, and it works well, but it won't compare to other high-end, graphically demanding games. Now the last 2 points, the last 2 different bullet points here, I will get through a bit quicker as less really needs to be said about them. Firstly, beautiful scenery. Now there's 1 million or more screenshots out there from all 3 games that show just how beautiful they can each be. Each have their own stylistic choices, but each work perfectly when someone finds the perfect locations. In all 3 games, I'm generally breathtaken when I see some of the locations. Some of you may find this a bit contradictory. You might feel that, if in my opinion, Elite has lower quality assets than Star Citizen and less variety, then how can it be equally as beautiful? Well, these things are in the eye of the beholder, and it depends on how you measure them. If you are patient and spend the time searching, you will find equally beautiful locations in all 3 games. But that goes on to accessibility that we'll get to in just a moment. But for now, we're talking about purely the ability to find beautiful scenery. So this is where the games diverge significantly. All 3 games are, in my opinion, equally as beautiful. But there are other very important factors at play here. They're only equally as beautiful if you get the right angle, and if you get the right lighting. They're also only as equally beautiful if you find the right location and the right planet, and if you're there at the right time of day to catch the correct sun position. There's an untold number of other factors at play here too. So that means No Man's Sky makes ease of access to planets and beautiful locations a breeze. Hello Games have considered accessibility with regards to every part of the game, and it really does show. Travel times are easy, travelling between systems is rapid, and yet the teleportation feature makes things very handy as well. So No Man's Sky Hello Games definitely think about gameplay. The same can be said about CIG, although here they put gameplay above speed. In concept, once Star Citizen is more fleshed out, this probably is going to be a very good approach, but nonetheless it means it can take a while to get to your chosen destination. That said, there are so many fantastic looking locations, often very close, that you're never very far away from any one of them. Elite Dangerous Odyssey, meanwhile, has an issue here. Frontier favour time gating over gameplay. It means that everything takes an extremely long time, whether it's watching animations play out over and over again, having to escape gravity wells, or long travel times. All of this is certainly a problem, but it's not a problem in and of itself, but it's compounded with the other really big issue. The real problem is that the lack of variety in quality planets means that players will find themselves travelling from planet to planet to planet in the hopes of eventually finding a great looking location. And yes, these locations do exist, but finding them takes either luck or time, or perhaps alternatively searching outside of the game for coordinates for a location someone else has already found. So, where do we stand here? Well, I'm not going to give a final score for each of these games here, but when focusing purely on planetary tech, CIG are moving Star Citizen into a league of its own. Pyro looks to be fantastic, but who knows when it's going to release, and whilst the game certainly has a load of nice looking locations with its current star system, more is always going to be better, and of course it looks like CIG are stepping up the tech development here. Again, when really is the question, but the recent CitizenCon highlight reel really does show some spectacular looking locations. Again, do keep in mind that I'm not speaking to the quality of each of the games here. I'm not talking about their development cycles or release schedules. I'm not even talking about gameplay. We're looking purely at planetary tech here. So when it comes to beautiful worlds, Star Citizen is becoming increasingly more difficult to beat. Do let me know your thoughts and feelings on all of this in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. Which is your favourite planetary tech, either from the 3 titles that I've mentioned or from other games? As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.